Hey guys, Darcy here, and today we're going to talk about how you should back up your files so they're never lost. Let's get into it. Alright, so full disclosure, recently watched a video from Colt Capperrune talking about how he goes about backing up his files and why. As well, in the same day, a fellow producer hit me up and asked me, how I go about doing it. I had mentioned to him before about how I back up my files, and he was looking to upgrade his setup. So I decided to kind of put this video together as both an answer to his question as well as a bit of a response to Colt Capperrune, because I think there's a few things that we can improve on. When it comes to backing up your files, there's a rule of threes. The file should exist in three places: where you are currently working on it right now, a backup that is local to you, meaning it is within quick access, and somewhere that is completely external of where you are working, basically not in your house, to ensure that if your stuff was to be robbed, burnt up, or just lost somehow, you would still have a copy somewhere, even if it was hard to get at. Now, for myself, I have a particular setup that I've kind of honed over the years, and it's all built around everything being very passive. I want everything backed up, but I do not want to think about actually doing it. If I, as a human, rely on myself to do the backup, to drag files to a Dropbox or to another hard drive, I'm going to forget. I'm going to get busy, something is going to get lost, and that is where the problem happens. Everything for me needs to be automated. That's what computers are here to do. They can do that stuff for you, so that's how we do it. First off, I actually store my files on an external hard drive. That is my main working place. This also could be your computer, but I just prefer an external hard drive. If you're going to work off an external, make sure it's a high performance drive with a good cable and a good connection. USB-C, Thunderbolt is even more ideal, but you want something that is fast. Let's get into the meat of it. How you should go about backing up externally. Well, taking a look here, I have a program called Carbon Copy Cloner. This is exclusive for the Mac. There are some for Windows that are basically the same thing. I think there's even some that are free. This is just the one that I felt was the best for the Mac after doing my own research. Essentially what happens here, it takes the files from my NVMe drive and backs them up to a 4 terabyte, another external hard drive that also goes to a specific folder within that drive called Music. It's also because that hard drive has other historical archived backup stuff, and I didn't want it to write directly to the root or the main part of the drive, so I just have a specific drive in there, so I have other folders for other things that I've kept over the years. This runs on an hourly basis. This program works exactly as you think. As long as my computer is plugged into my hub and both of the hard drives are plugged into the hub at the same time, it will back up the files. It also has settings for things like, don't try and back stuff up when, the drives are currently active. Meaning I'm currently, using something like Luna and it is currently actually writing 2 files on that drive. One thing to note is that this 4 terabyte hard drive is not an SSD. It is an HDD. The older, bigger, more physical drives that spin and are far slower. But that doesn't really matter because I'm not working off that drive. The only thing that this is going to impact is how long it takes to back things up on a regular basis. I'm a big fan of using hard drives instead of solid state drives for backups because they're cheaper, you can get them bigger at a better price. As well, you don't really need to access files quickly, you just need to make sure they're there in case something happens to your solid state drive. Solid state drives are really performant, but they do have something in them that is a controller that will fail at some point. Actually, you should check out the Colt Capperrune video because he does go over this in more detail with a really good story. But in other words, what's important to know is that even a good solid state drive at some point might die on you, and it may not be possible for you to access the files off of it ever again if it fails in the worst possible way. Having a backup hard drive of that would make it very easy to be able to retrieve those files if that scenario were to happen. It would be unlikely that both of the drives were to fail at the same time. But if that were the case, that's why we move on to the other backup. I have another software called Backblaze. This is an application that scans your computer based off of the settings you configure and just backs them up to the web to their servers. If we look at the settings here, when it takes a second here to load all my drives, sees I want to back up my main drive from my computer. I'm also backing up my backup hard drive, but that's a little bit special. I'll get to that in a second. And my NVMe drive. In terms of this backup drive, however, I do have an exclusion where I don't back up that music folder, simply because I'd be backing up the same thing twice and I already have a backup of it from here. So I'm backing up everything else that's external inside that drive, or everything else that are my other old archived folders. Now, this here, if I were to lose my other two, would have the ability to either do a restore, and this company even has the ability for me to pay them to send me an actual hard drive with a copy of all of my files. You know, in this scenario that I have too much to try to retrieve. So this is just the foolproof way to ensure that if my main drive were to go, my local backup were to go, I still have something to go back to. At the end of the day, it comes down to the rule of three. Your data needs to be in three places: where you're working on it now, somewhere locally backed up so you can access it quickly, and somewhere remote in case the first two disappear. When you have this set up, you'll realize that your computer is now becoming more replaceable. Not that you want to go and buy a computer on a regular basis, but the computer itself just becomes more of a tool, because the data is what matters on the computer. It's what you're really working with. No matter what you're doing, it is the most important thing. If you found this helpful, let me know that in the comments. Let me know if you have any questions. And otherwise, have yourself a good day. Peace.